What's up guys, Steel Frodo here, welcome to another tech video, and today, if you read the title, we are talking about something very near and dear to my heart and kind of explaining why I do it, which is why I, as a 25-year-old living in the 21st century, still shoots on film. So let's get started. So for any of you who actually watch my tech videos, you'll know that there have been several videos where I talk about old school film cameras, developing film with my dad, more old school film cameras, weird cameras that would normally never make it in the digital age, all that kind of stuff. And there's a common theme as to why I enjoy shooting with those style of cameras, almost more than I enjoy shooting with something like my Sony here or something like a Canon SL2. And to kind of explain why, we have to first look at digital photography before we talk about film photography. So digital photography has gotten so accessible to the masses that things like disposable cameras are a thing of the past due to the fact that we all have pretty decent smartphone cameras, and you don't have to worry about, having it developed. You have it instantly. When it comes to more mid-range cameras, you have things like the Sony a6000 or something like a Canon T6 or T7 base model, which runs you about the same price as what you would spend on sort of your introductory camera back in the early 70s and early 80s, like something like this Pentax K1000. And for cameras that are a little more advanced than a beginner's camera, but not quite up to the pro level, you have things like the Canon SL2. Something like this would be kind of, you're familiar with the basics and even to the mid-range of photography, and you want something a little more robust and something a little more generally capable. Same thing goes for the Sony a6400 I'm filming on. The only thing with that is I can't really demo it because, well, it's the camera I'm filming on. But with all of these digital cameras, there's one thing that's fairly consistent, which is the strive to make a perfect image, flawless image. Take something and make it as perfect as possible, which is fine, but that is where the inherent difference in film versus digital, for me, lies. Now let me cut in here real quick and talk about this pursuit of perfection with digital, because I was shooting B-roll and realized I wanted to talk a bit more about it. So something like this, the Canon SL2 that I've used a couple times through this video, this is a perfect example of the pursuit of perfection, but the decrease in build quality. So this camera has an incredible image sensor, a great image processor, and it's got a couple metal bits here and there, the flash, the lens, and the tripod mounts, and it's even got a nice glass touchscreen that folds out and all that cool stuff. But I would say 90% of this camera on the outside is composed of plastic, and it just feels kind of cheap, even though it's $530. Now let's go back for a second to when film was it, and this camera here, this is, and still is actually, the most popular and longest produced SLR camera for film, period. This is the Pentax K1000. I made a video about it, you guys can check it out in the description. And this camera was primarily made out of metal. It had film, so you get the benefit of picking what sensitivity, what kind, what look, all that fun stuff. Came with a phenomenal lens, was one of the fastest cameras for the price. This shoots at 1/1000th of a second. And, like I said earlier, made out of metal, built like a tank. And this cost $330 because that pursuit of perfection with digital didn't exist. You were making the best out of the physical equipment to support the film. And I love that about this camera. And you even get a camera like this. This is a Hagerstown Practicus Super TL. This is an East German camera. That shows you how old it is. And this is back when East Germany was not great. Well, I don't think East Germany ever was really great. And it's still made of metal. And I don't even know what this cost in its day, but it's in good shape and it was built very well. And then for plasticky cameras, of course, like I said, you get something plasticky like this Holga, which is all plastic. And if you really wanted to go basic with it, something very simple. This is literally made of cardboard wrapped in fake leather with some metal fronts and backs and some glass for the lensing and the viewfinder. That's it. And there's wood on the inside, for God's sakes. But the difference is when you want the quality of image on something like this, you are buying the quality of image with the camera right out of the gate. And again, that pursuit of perfection, that's fine for a lot of people, but you can't change the look without going into post. Whereas something like one of these, or even back in the day, $330, something like this, you can change what the look is simply by switching out the film. Anyway, I just wanted to cut away real quick. I was doing some B-roll footage and thought of that, so I threw everything on the table. Now we'll get back to the main review. So with a digital camera, I can go out and snap 800 photos, and all of them are going to look, well, I can take some pretty bad digital photos, but all of them are going to be about as good as the camera can do in the hands of somebody who is very capable, all the way down to somebody who's fairly inept. So it makes sense that with digital photography, people want a more accessible experience where they can throw a camera in auto and just go and shoot. And it somewhat detaches you from the essence of photography, from the idea of going and capturing life and making an image your own by seeing it first and then taking the image, not the other way around. I mean, I can take pictures all day long that would look mediocre and throw it into Lightroom, and suddenly I have a phenomenal image. This is a perfect example. Here's my starting image. Here's what it looks like after. And in this instance, it's actually funny because I was trying to emulate old school slide film photography, and I got pretty close in my opinion, but that's the idea. Is I took a picture that was mildly underexposed in the grass and pretty decent exposure with some pretty nice clouds, and then I was able to get so much out of it by just throwing it into Lightroom. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Editing photos is a lot of fun. Even I love editing photos. But when it comes to film photography, there are so many more things than just taking the photo and editing the photo to post somewhere. When it comes to film photography, you have to make sure that as many of those 12, 24, 36 slide shots that you have count. Because if you spend $12 on a roll of film and you have 36 exposures and you decide that only 2 of them are good, think of how much money you've wasted because you've now spent so much on the roll of film to only get 2 shots out of it. Meanwhile, if I take an SD card and blast through 15 photos and I only like 2 of them, I can just delete the others and free up that space. So making every shot count is one of the big things that I love about film photography. It makes you sit and think. In fact, people get irritated with me a lot when I take photos on my phone or on a DSLR because I will sit there and compose the shot and take 2 pictures, and they're like, oh, take some more, and it's like, I got the shots I wanted. I already saw what I wanted. Most of the time I take 1 shot if it's just me because I see what I want, I take the shot, I'm done. Now when it comes to actually making the photos a physical thing that you can put onto a computer or into a frame, it's pretty easy on digital. You pop the SD card out of the camera, you put it in the computer, and there you go. You send it to the printer or whatever you intend to do with it. Film has this whole other organic experience to it, which if you've never developed film before, but you're into photography, I highly recommend you try developing your own film. There is something enjoyably therapeutic about it. There's an entire video, I'll link it here, there's an entire video where my dad and I actually went and developed Ektachrome film, and both rolls that we developed were expired, and I have since then developed more film that wasn't expired. But it was this sort of bonding moment between my dad and I because we were able to sit down and I was able to develop film for the first time myself, and he was able to develop film for the first time in almost 30 years. And being able to take an image and suddenly make it a physical thing that you can put into a scanner or put into a booklet with your slides, that has such an organic feeling to it of creating something almost twice in a way. You create things almost twice when you take film photos. When you take a film photo, you are, of course, taking the image with the camera, so you feel as though you've created an image. But when you develop the film yourself, it almost feels like you're creating it a second time. You're going from the idea in your head that you took and making it a physical thing because you're, well, making it into a film strip that can be exposed to light without ruining the entire roll of film. Which to me has such a bigger impact on the way you feel about the shots you take versus something like taking an SD card out and popping it into the computer to edit it in Lightroom. And with this whole pursuit of perfection that digital photography has, where they want it to be more accessible, it is great because more people are taking photos, but you lose some of the skill required to take really good photos. getting back for a moment to this Pentax K1000, this camera is fully manual. You have to know what every single one of the little levers on here does. You have to know what shutter speed, what aperture, what focal distance, what ISO the film is before you even take it out to shoot with it, because of the fact that there is no electronic anything on this camera. Now, you still have that on a camera like this. You have a manual mode which allows you to change the shutter speed, you can change the aperture, you have all of these things available to you in a camera like this. But for a lot of people who have more money than photography skills, they will buy something like this, throw it in auto, and never even think twice about it. Maybe they'll throw it into video, but that video mode will still be fully automatic. And so the somewhat magic and skill of photography is kind of lost on those people because it's just another thing. I mean, I'm so OCD, hell, I installed the Moment app, which if you guys want a phenomenal photography app, for those of you who know what ISO and shutter speed mean and all that stuff, I would highly recommend spending the money to get the Moment app. I'm not sponsored or anything, but it is one of the best camera apps, I would say the best camera app that I have ever bought for my phone, because I have full control over manual exposure, manual, not aperture, you can't adjust that, manual ISO, manual shutter speed, all that stuff I can adjust right there in the Moment app. Now, I'm sure all you Samsung users, you have your Pro mode, but if you don't, I would highly recommend the Moment app. But back to what I was saying, the magic is kind of lost for those people who shoot in auto exclusively because the camera just does all the work. Now, in that same vein, the pursuit of perfection I mentioned with these digital cameras also killed off one of the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest benefits to film. And that, in my opinion, is the weird stuff. The weird, experimental cameras that would never be made with digital nowadays. Digital's pursuit of perfection means that you'll never know what it's like to shoot on expired film and see the grainy, miscolored mess that ends up somehow looking beautiful, or the fact that you messed up a shutter speed and suddenly you got an image that captures life moving in a way that you never thought you could on stills. Or taking something like this Holga camera and loading it up with black and white film and shooting through a plastic lens that literally only gives you focus to play with no other adjustments, and getting a shot that blows you away because you think you know what you're going for, but you have to wait to see it until the film is processed. And the anticipation of what you want to see and what you get is such a great feeling when you get a photo that is not only what you expected, but better in every way. Now, I kind of started rambling here, but the point is, for me, film photography is something that is quantifiable in a lot of ways for those of you who want the organic and experimental and manual experience of photo taking. But you don't want to learn it in digital, or you want the challenge of limited images. That, for me, was what drew me into film photography. The limited time that you have with each roll of film to make the most out of it. The experimentation of, again, this is one of my favorite cameras. It's a $35 camera, and that's bundled with film because it's such a little experimental piece of garbage, but yet you can get some of the most incredible shots I have ever taken. And things like SD cards don't expire. What would an expired SD card look like? Nothing. It'd be rotted away and you wouldn't be able to use it. Whereas expired film has this magical essence to it that just feels organic. And I guess at the end of the day, that word really defines my reason for loving film photography. It's organic. It feels like something physical. You're not taking an image to post out on the ether somewhere to forget about later. You're taking something that will mean something to you because you remember every shot, because you had to compose every shot to make the most of the 12 or 24 or 36 roll slides. I keep saying slides, that's all I shoot on now. But that's my point. And if you guys are at all interested in photography, I would recommend checking out any one of the videos that I've done on the Holga 120N or my Pentax K1000, or my dad and I developing film. In fact, that's the K1000 video. That I actually would recommend as the first camera. If you guys can find one in good shape, I would recommend getting that if you guys want to get into film photography, because you're going to spend a decent amount on that camera. They are very widely available, but they are also somewhat expensive unless you can find a good deal. Like I found mine for $50. And start shooting. There are places all over the country that still develop film. And if you really want to get into it, start developing your own film. I got an entire kit of Film Developer, the dark bag, the tank, all of that for about $70. And just with that little bit of money and a lot of bit of effort, you can become a better photographer in not just film, but it's a translatable skill. So when you pick up a digital camera, you can throw it into manual knowing now what you learned with a film camera. And that allows for so many more possibilities. And hell, you can even impress your friends. I know I did. But either way, guys, those are my reasons why I shoot on film and why I think you should too. And if you guys are into photography, like I said, check out some of the other videos. Make sure to like and subscribe. Please check out the links in the description. Check out more on this playlist. I got tech videos for pretty much everything. And otherwise, I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one.